courtroom 4B and said the words I had been dreading for weeks. If they push the best interest of the child angle, we might lose. His voice was low, careful, like he was delivering a diagnosis no one wanted to hear. The fluorescent lights above us had been dimmed per Ethan's accommodation request, but the room still felt too bright, too cold, too full of people who wanted to take my son away from me. Across the aisle sat my parents, Richard and Diane Prescott, dressed like they were attending a charity gala. My sister Victoria sat beside them, checking her phone every few minutes, not a single hair out of place. Their lawyer, Harrison Burke, shuffled papers with the confidence of a man who had never lost. I looked at Ethan beside me. 17 years old now, tall and thin, his noise-canceling headphones resting around his neck like armor. He didn't fidget, didn't panic. His gray-blue eyes moved across the room, cataloging exits, light sources, the distance between our table and theirs. Then he leaned close to my ear and whispered 5 words that made no sense at all. Just let them talk. I wanted to grab him by the shoulders and ask what he meant. Let them talk? These people had thrown us away 11 years ago. They had slammed doors in our faces, ignored our calls, sent lawyers instead of birthday cards. And now they wanted control of his money, his future, his life. But Ethan just looked at me with that steady gaze, the one he got when he saw patterns other people missed. He nodded once, slow and certain, like he knew something I did not. My throat tightened. I turned back to Daniel, our lawyer, and tried to focus on his strategy notes. But my mind kept drifting backward, 11 years backward, to the night everything shattered. The Prescott family home in Lake Oswego sat on a hill overlooking the water, all polished wood and expensive silence. I was 29 years old that October evening, sitting on my parents' leather couch with Ethan beside me. He was 6 then, small for his age, rocking slightly the way he did when the air felt wrong. His fingers traced patterns on his knee, counting something only he could see. 2 weeks earlier, we had gotten the diagnosis. Autism spectrum disorder. I was still learning what those words meant. My parents had called a family meeting, said it was important. My sister Victoria was there with her husband Bradley, both of them perched on the love seat like guests at someone else's funeral. My mother stood by the fireplace, arms crossed, refusing to meet my eyes. My father sat in his leather chair, the one no one else was allowed to use, studying his hands like they held the answers to questions no one had asked. Something was wrong. I could feel it in the way the room held its breath. Victoria spoke first. She always did. "Julia, we need to talk about Ethan." Her voice was rehearsed, careful, the same tone she used when firing employees at her marketing firm. "My children are scared of him. He screams. He does not look at anyone. Last week he had a meltdown at Mom's birthday dinner and Madison cried for an hour. I felt Ethan's rocking increase beside me. He could hear every word. He always heard everything, even when people assumed he was not listening. I tried to keep my voice steady. "He is 6 years old, Victoria. He just got diagnosed. He is learning. We are all learning." Victoria shook her head, that pitying look on her face that I had seen 1,000 times growing up. "He is not normal, Julia, and I cannot have my kids around that. Around that, not around him, around that. Like my son was a thing, a problem, a mess to be cleaned up." I turned to my mother, waiting for her to defend us, to say something, anything. Instead, Diane Prescott looked at me with eyes I did not recognize and said, "Sweetheart, we have discussed this. We think it is best if you and Ethan find your own space." The words hit me like a physical blow. Find our own space. This was my home. These were my parents. I looked at my father, the man who taught me to ride a bike, who walked me down the aisle at my first wedding, who used to call me his little fighter. Dad? He did not look up. His silence filled the room like smoke, suffocating everything it touched. That silence told me more than any words could. They had already decided, all of them. This meeting was not a discussion. It was an eviction. I stood up so fast the coffee table rattled. He is your grandson. He is 6 years old and he just found out his brain works differently and you are throwing him out? Victoria's voice turned sharp. Do not be dramatic. We are not throwing anyone out. We are just saying maybe some distance would be healthy. For everyone. Distance. They meant exile. They meant disappearing. They meant pretending we never existed. My mother stepped forward, arms still crossed, chin lifted. Julia, we have made our decision. You can stay. But Ethan is too much for this family to handle. Too much. My son was too much. I looked at Ethan. He had stopped rocking. His eyes were fixed on the window, watching rain streak down the glass, his fingers frozen mid-pattern on his knee. He had heard everything. He understood more than they gave him credit for. He always did. I grabbed his jacket from the back of the couch. Then I guess we are both leaving. My mother's voice followed me toward the door. Julia, do not be rash. I spun around. Rash! You just told me to choose between my son and my family. There is no choice. There was never a choice. Victoria called after me as I helped Ethan with his jacket. You are making a mistake. You cannot handle him alone. I did not answer. I could not. If I opened my mouth again, I would scream, and I did not want Ethan to hear me scream. I wanted him to see me walk, to see me choose him without hesitation, without regret, without looking back. The rain had turned into a downpour by the time we reached my car. A used Honda with a dent in the bumper and a check engine light that had been on for 6 months. I strapped Ethan into his car seat, my hands shaking so badly I could barely work the buckle. Through the rain-streaked window, I saw my father appear in the doorway. For one desperate moment, I thought he was coming to stop us, to apologize, to be the father I remembered. He watched me pull out of the driveway. He did not wave. He did not follow. He just stood there until I turned the corner, and then he went back inside and closed the door. I drove through Portland that night with no destination, no plan, no money, no family. Just away. Just anywhere that was not there. Ethan was silent in the back seat, more silent than usual. I kept checking the rearview mirror, making sure he was okay, making sure he was still there. We stopped at a red light on Macadam Avenue. Rain drummed on the roof. My hands would not stop shaking on the steering wheel. Then, from the back seat, a small voice. Mommy? I turned around so fast my seatbelt cut into my shoulder. He had not called me that in weeks. The doctors said speech might be difficult for a while, that I should not push, that I should wait. But there he was, looking at me with those gray-blue eyes, really looking, which he rarely did. They do not want me, do they? My heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. No, baby, they do not. I reached back, took his small hand in mine. But I do. I want you, and I am never going to stop. Ethan nodded once, the same way he would nod 17 years later in a courtroom. Then he turned back to the window and watched the rain. I drove through Portland that night with nothing but my son's hand in mine. I had no idea that 11 years later I would be sitting in a courtroom, and that same little boy would hold all the cards. I had no idea he had been preparing for this moment since he was 8 years old. I had no idea that the family who threw us away would come crawling back when he built something worth $3.7 million. And I had no idea that his whispered words, just let them talk, would be the key to everything. But that night, all I knew was this. I had my son. He had me, and I was never, ever letting go. I woke up on an air mattress in a 600-square-foot apartment on Division Street, staring at a water stain on the ceiling shaped like a question mark. I had memorized every curve of that stain over the past 2 weeks, tracing it with my eyes during the hours I could not sleep. Ethan was already awake, sitting by the window in the pale morning light, counting cars as they passed below. 1, 2, 3, 4. His voice was barely a whisper, the only time he spoke without being prompted. I lay there listening to him count, wondering how I was supposed to do this, how I was supposed to raise a child alone when I could barely keep myself together. The apartment was small and old and falling apart in ways I discovered daily. The kitchen faucet dripped, the heater rattled like it was angry about something. The neighbor's television bled through the walls at all hours, laugh tracks from sitcoms I never watched. But it was ours. No one could ask us to leave. No one could look at Ethan and call him too much and tell us to find somewhere else. I had given him the bedroom and set up my air mattress in the living room, which meant I slept next to the drafty window and woke up cold every morning. It did not matter. He needed routine. He needed his own space. I could survive a little cold. Every morning I did the math. The numbers I could not escape. My savings account held $4,200. First month's rent and deposit had eaten $1,800. Ethan's therapy, the kind insurance refused to cover, cost $300 per session. I did the calculations over and over, hoping the numbers would change, knowing they would not. We had maybe 2 months before everything collapsed. I checked my phone every morning, still hoping. Still waiting for a message from my mother, my father, even Victoria. An apology, a change of heart, something. Instead, I found reminders from the bank about credit card payments and silence from everyone who was supposed to love us. I deleted the notifications and got Ethan ready for school. My job at Eastside Community Health Center started at 7 in the morning. I worked as a medical billing specialist, which meant I spent 8 hours staring at insurance codes and claim denials and payment disputes, translating human suffering into numbers that companies used to decide who deserved help and who did not. The pay was modest, but the benefits covered Ethan, at least partially. I had requested the early shift specifically so I could pick him up from school at 3, which meant waking at 5:30, getting him dressed in the same blue shirt and gray pants he could tolerate, dropping him at the early morning program by 6:45, and then racing across town to clock in on time. The routine became a blur. Wake, dress Ethan, drive, work, drive, pick up Ethan, therapy twice a week, dinner, always the same safe foods he would eat, bath, bed, lie awake staring at the question mark on the ceiling. Repeat. I drank coffee like it was oxygen. I ate lunch at my desk, usually something cold I had brought from home, barely tasting it. I learned to function on 3 or 4 hours of sleep because Ethan woke up at night, sometimes screaming, sometimes just standing in the doorway staring at nothing, and I never knew which version I would get. My coworkers whispered when I walked past. I caught fragments of their conversations, pieces that were clearly about me. I heard her family cut her off. Something wrong with her kid. She looks like she has not slept in weeks. I pretended not to hear. I ate lunch alone in my car, watching rain streak down the windshield, too tired to feel anything but numb. Learning Ethan's world became my second job. He did not speak in sentences. He spoke in patterns, numbers, colors, sequences that made sense only to him. I learned to decode his language. The way blue, blue, blue meant the lights were too bright and he needed them dimmed. The way he covered his ears when a sound was too much. The way he rocked when he was trying to regulate himself, to hold himself together in a world that was constantly too loud and too bright and too unpredictable. I started keeping a notebook. Page 1 listed sounds Ethan could handle, things like rain on the window, white noise from a fan, my humming. Page 2 listed sounds that triggered meltdowns, things like vacuum cleaners, hand dryers in public bathrooms, sudden laughter from strangers. Page 3 listed safe foods, plain pasta, apple slices, exactly 7 goldfish crackers, never more, never less. I became a scientist studying my own son, documenting every detail, searching for patterns that would help him survive. The meltdowns came without warning. A car horn outside, a tag on his shirt I forgot to cut off, the wrong spoon at dinner. Ethan would scream, not from anger but from overwhelm, his nervous system flooded with input it could not process. I learned to hold him, to rock with him, to whisper the same phrase over and over. I am here. You are safe. We will get through this. Sometimes it took 5 minutes, sometimes it took an hour. Sometimes I ended up crying too, holding my son on the kitchen floor, both of us shaking. One night Ethan melted down over the bathroom light. Too bright, he kept saying. Too bright, too bright, too bright. I remembered something I had read on a forum at 2 in the morning, a tip from another parent who understood. I grabbed a blue pillowcase from the closet and draped it over the light fixture. The harsh white softened to a gentle blue glow. Ethan stopped crying. He looked at the light, then at me, and said one word. Better. I made it to my air mattress before I started sobbing. One word. One small victory. It felt like I had climbed a mountain. 3 weeks into our new life, Margaret Chen sat down across from me in the break room. She was 58 years old, with gray-streaked hair pulled back in a practical bun and reading glasses on a beaded chain around her neck. She had worked at the clinic for 22 years. Everyone called her the heart of Eastside. I barely knew her. I barely knew anyone. I kept my head down and did my work and tried not to fall apart in public. She looked at me with eyes that saw too much and said, "You look like you have not slept in a month." I almost laughed. Is it that obvious? Honey, I have raised 3 kids and buried a husband. I know exhausted when I see it. I do not know why I started talking. Maybe because she was the first person in weeks who had spoken to me like a human being instead of a subject for gossip. I told her everything. Ethan, the diagnosis, my family, the apartment with the dripping faucet, the insurance denials and the therapy bills, and the nights I lay awake wondering if I was enough. Margaret listened without interrupting, without judging, without offering empty reassurances. When I finished, she reached into her bag and pulled out a folder, worn and soft from handling. Inside were photocopied pages, resources for parents of children on the spectrum, support groups, sliding scale therapists, respite care options, emergency assistance programs. I stared at the folder. Why do you have this? My grandson is autistic, she said, diagnosed at 4. He is 19 now, in community college, one of the happiest kids you will ever meet. She covered my hand with hers. Family is not always blood, honey. Sometimes it is whoever shows up when everyone else leaves. I could not speak. I just nodded, clutching that folder like a lifeline, because that is exactly what it was. That night, after Ethan fell asleep, I sat on my air mattress with my laptop open. I was researching IEP procedures, trying to understand the school's plans for Ethan, when an email notification popped up. The sender made my heart stop. Diane Prescott, Mom. I stared at it for a full minute before clicking. Maybe they had changed their minds. Maybe they were sorry. Maybe they wanted us back. The subject line read, "Moving forward." The message was 3 sentences long. Julia, please do not contact us anymore. Victoria needs peace, and your presence and Ethan's disrupts that. We wish you well, but we need to protect our family's stability. It was signed Mom and Dad. Protect our family's stability. As if Ethan and I were not family. As if we were a disease they needed to quarantine. I read it 3 times, waiting to feel something. Anger, grief, despair. Instead, I felt something harden inside me, a wall going up brick by brick. I closed the laptop without responding. There was nothing left to say. The next afternoon, my phone rang at work. The school's number. My stomach dropped the way it always did when that number appeared. Mrs. Prescott? This is Principal Hendricks at Woodstock Elementary. We need you to come in. Is Ethan okay? Is he hurt? He is not hurt. But he has not eaten lunch in 5 days. He sits in the corner of the classroom facing the wall. He will not speak to teachers. He will not participate. Frankly, Mrs. Prescott, we are not sure we are equipped to handle his needs. I heard what she was not saying. They wanted him out. Another door closing, another place that did not want my son. I told my supervisor I had to leave and grabbed my keys. Margaret caught my arm on the way out. Do you need me to come? I shook my head. I did not know what I needed. I just knew my son was sitting alone in a classroom, facing a wall, and the people who were supposed to help him were ready to give up after 6 weeks. I drove to that school with my hands shaking on the wheel. But this time, it was not fear making me shake. It was something else. Something harder. I thought about my mother's email, protect our family's stability. Fine. If my family would not protect Ethan, I would do it myself. I would fight every school, every insurance company, every system that tried to push him aside. I would learn their rules and beat them at their own game. I had no money, No support, no idea what I was doing. But I had Margaret's folder, I had my notebook full of patterns, and I had a son who needed someone to stand between him and a world that kept trying to throw him away. I was going to be that someone, whatever it took, however long it took. I was going to figure this out, or break trying. I walked into Woodstock Elementary School with Margaret's folder clutched against my chest like a shield. The hallway smelled like floor wax and cafeteria pizza, and the walls were covered with construction paper turkeys because November had arrived without my noticing. Ethan had been at this school for 6 weeks. It felt like 6 years. Principal Hendricks waited for me in her office, a woman in her mid-50s with glasses on a chain, and a voice designed to sound concerned while saying terrible things. The school counselor sat beside her, pen ready, taking notes on whatever was about to happen to my son. They used phrases like, not a good fit and limited resources, and perhaps a more specialized environment. I had heard those phrases before. They meant they wanted Ethan gone. I opened Margaret's folder and pulled out a page I had highlighted the night before, a printout about IEP rights under federal law. My son is entitled to a free appropriate public education, I said, keeping my voice steady even though my hands were shaking under the table. That is not a request. That is the law. Principal Hendricks blinked. The counselor stopped writing. I continued before they could interrupt. I want an IEP meeting scheduled within 30 days. I want a behavioral assessment conducted by a qualified specialist, and I want a written plan for his accommodations that addresses his sensory needs. The room went quiet. Principal Hendricks cleared her throat. Mrs. Prescott, we were not suggesting that Ethan should leave. Yes, you were, I said. Now let us talk about what you are going to do instead. I walked out of that meeting with a scheduled IEP evaluation and a promise of accommodations in writing. My hands did not stop shaking until I got to my car. But I had won something. The first battle in a war I was only beginning to understand. 2 weeks later, I found Dr. Nina Reyes. I had called every name in Margaret's folder, working through the list during lunch breaks and after Ethan fell asleep. Most therapists had 6-month wait lists. Most did not accept our insurance. Most were not taking new patients. Dr. Reyes called me back the same day I left a message. I had a cancellation, she said. Can you come Thursday? Her office was in a small Victorian house on Alberta Street, converted into therapy spaces filled with soft lighting and weighted blankets on every chair. No fluorescent bulbs. Fidget toys arranged by color on a low shelf. It was the first space I had ever seen that seemed designed for someone like Ethan. Dr. Reyes was in her early 40s with dark hair streaked silver and warm brown eyes that never rushed. She spoke slowly, calmly, with no sudden movements. During Ethan's first session, she sat on the floor at his level instead of towering over him in a chair. She did not force eye contact. She did not demand words. She just watched him organize her colored blocks, first by size, then by shade, then by some pattern only he understood. He did not speak, but he hummed 3 notes repeated over and over. Doctor. Reyes hummed back. The same 3 notes. Ethan looked at her. Actually looked, his eyes meeting hers for just a moment before sliding away. I held my breath. After the session, Dr. Reyes turned to me with an expression I did not recognize at first. It took me a moment to realize it was hope. Your son is not broken, she said. He is not missing anything. His brain just processes the world differently, and that difference has gifts most people cannot see yet. I felt something crack open in my chest. No one had ever said Ethan had gifts. Not my parents, not the school, not any of the doctors who handed me pamphlets about managing expectations and preparing for limitations. Dr. Reyes saw something else entirely. And for the first time since the diagnosis, I let myself believe she might be right. I became a student of my son's world. Every night after he fell asleep, I stayed up researching, reading library books about autism and sensory processing, scrolling through online forums where other parents shared strategies at 2 a.m. I learned vocabulary that had meant nothing to me months before. Stimming, proprioceptive input, executive function, masking. I learned that Ethan's rocking was not a problem to be fixed, but a tool he used to regulate his nervous system. I learned that his rigid routines were not stubbornness, but survival, his way of creating predictability in a world that felt chaotic and overwhelming. The IEP meeting came and went. I sat across from school administrators and specialists with my notebook full of research and my folder full of documentation. I requested specific accommodations based on what I had learned: noise-canceling headphones, movement breaks every 30 minutes, a visual schedule he could check throughout the day. They pushed back. I pushed harder. Document everything, Dr. Reyes had told me. So I did. Every email, every meeting, every time they said no, and every time I made them say yes instead. At home, I built systems. A visual schedule on the refrigerator with picture cards showing each part of the day, the same breakfast every morning because routine reduced anxiety, warnings before every transition, 5 minutes until bath time, 2 minutes until we leave for school. Ethan began to trust the patterns. One evening, without prompting, he pointed to the picture card for bedtime, then walked to his room and lay down. I stood in the hallway with my hand over my mouth. 6 months ago, bedtime had taken 2 hours of screaming and tears. Tonight it took a picture card and 30 seconds. I cried myself to sleep that night, but for the first time, they were not tears of exhaustion. They were tears of hope. In December, 4 months after we left Lake Oswego, I found an envelope in our mailbox with no return address. The handwriting was loopy and childish, unfamiliar. Inside was a hand-drawn card on construction paper. Crayon figures, one tall and one small, holding hands beneath a wobbly yellow sun. The message inside was written in careful letters. Dear Ethan, I miss you. Love, Lily, Victoria's daughter, 8 years old. She must have sent this secretly without her parents knowing. The missing return address was intentional, a child's attempt at hiding her tracks. I sat on the stairs holding that card for a long time. Victoria had taught her children that Ethan was dangerous, someone to avoid, but Lily remembered him as someone worth missing. I put the card in my nightstand drawer. I did not tell Ethan. I could not explain why we were not allowed to write back. The following week, I drove to Lake Oswego for a specific brand of pasta, the only kind Ethan would eat. I knew it was risky. This was my family's territory, but Ethan had not eaten in 2 days, and desperation made me brave. I was reaching for the blue box in aisle 7 when I saw her. Victoria, 10 feet away, her cart full of organic produce and expensive wine. Our eyes met. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. For one moment I thought she might speak to me, say something, acknowledge that I existed, that Ethan existed, that we had once been family. Instead, Victoria turned away, deliberately, completely. She pushed her cart in the opposite direction without a word, disappearing around the corner like I was a stranger she had never met. Not anger, not confrontation, just erasure. I stood frozen in that aisle, holding the pasta box, watching my sister's back disappear. She had not even flinched. Ethan was changing, slowly, quietly, in ways I noticed only because I watched him so carefully. At 7 years old, he still did not speak much, but he observed everything. He sat by the window for hours, tracking patterns I could not see. Which neighbor left at what time? Which cars passed in which order? Blue car, 7:15, he would murmur. Red truck, 7:22. Mail truck, 9:41. I bought him a notebook, and he filled it with observations, not words but symbols, numbers, sequences. I did not understand most of it, but Dr. Reyes told me not to interrupt. He is making sense of the world the only way he knows how, she said. Support it. Do not fight it. One night I flipped through his notebook while he slept, page after page of patterns and codes and systems. On the last page, something different. A list of names: Grandma, Grandpa, Aunt Vicky, Lily. Next to each name, a single word. Gone, except next to one name. Mommy. Stayed. I closed the notebook with shaking hands. He understood more than I had ever realized. He had been watching, categorizing, making sense of who had abandoned him and who had not. He was 6 years old, and he already knew the difference between people who left and people who stayed. At the end of the month, I opened an envelope from Dr. Reyes's practice. Insurance had denied the claim again. Amount due, $2,400. Past due invoices from previous months added another $1,800. I checked my bank account. $812. Rent was due in 5 days, $950. The numbers swam in front of my eyes. I had been so careful, so frugal, and it still was not enough. My phone buzzed. A text from my landlord. Reminder, rent due Friday. I set down the phone and looked at Ethan's closed door. I could hear him humming in his sleep, those 3 notes he always hummed, the ones Dr. Reyes had hummed back to him. I had no money, no family, no backup plan. But I had that door, and the boy behind it. Tomorrow I would figure something out. Apply for assistance programs. Ask about payment plans. Sell something, anything. I would not give up. I could not give up. Ethan had written it in his notebook. Mommy stayed. I was going to make sure that word never changed. 2 years after we left Lake Oswego, my body finally broke. I woke up one winter morning and could not get out of bed. My throat felt like sandpaper. My skin burned with fever. My bones ached like someone had replaced them with lead. I lay there staring at the ceiling, at that question mark water stain I knew so well, and realized I could not move. For 2 years I had run on caffeine and desperation, working double shifts to cover therapy bills, staying up past midnight to research and plan and fight. I had lost 15 pounds, not from any diet but from forgetting to eat. And now my body was demanding payment for all the rest I had denied it. From the kitchen I heard Ethan counting. 7, he said. 777. His cereal. He always counted 7 pieces before he would eat. The routine continued whether I was there or not. I forced myself upright, my head spinning, the room tilting around me. I could not afford to be sick. There was no one else, no family to call, no backup plan. If I did not work, we did not eat. If I did not take Ethan to school, his routine would shatter and the meltdowns would follow. I dragged myself to the bathroom mirror and looked at the woman staring back. Dark circles carved into pale skin, cracked lips, eyes that had forgotten what rest looked like. I was 31 years old and I looked 45. I cannot do this anymore, I thought. Then I heard Ethan's voice from the kitchen. 7. Always 7. I splashed water on my face and got dressed. I made it to work that day. Margaret took one look at me and said I looked like death warmed over. I told her I felt worse. She handed me cold medicine and watched me swallow it with coffee that had been sitting too long. I processed insurance claims with trembling fingers, the numbers blurring on the screen, the fluorescent lights drilling into my skull. Just get through the day, I told myself. Just get through one more day. At 2 in the afternoon, my phone buzzed. The school's number. That familiar dread flooded my stomach, the same feeling I got every time that number appeared. Mrs. Prescott? This is Principal Hendricks. There has been an incident. We need you to come immediately. My mouth went dry. Is Ethan okay? Is he hurt? He is not hurt. The principal paused. But he hurt someone else. The words made no sense. Ethan did not hurt people. Ethan avoided people. He flinched when strangers got too close. He had never once raised a hand against anyone. Something was very wrong. I grabbed my keys and told my supervisor I had to leave. Margaret caught my arm on the way out. Do you need me to come? I shook my head, even though I did not know what I needed. I just knew my gentle, pattern-obsessed son had supposedly hurt another child, and nothing about that fit the boy I knew. The principal's office smelled like old coffee and disappointment. Ethan sat in a corner chair with his knees pulled to his chest, rocking hard, his noise-canceling headphones missing from around his neck. His eyes were squeezed shut. Across from Principal Hendricks sat a woman I did not recognize, pressing a tissue to her nose, glaring at my son like he was a monster. "Mrs. Prescott," the principal said. Ethan struck another student during lunch. He broke the boy's nose. I looked at Ethan. His hands were shaking. His whole body was shaking. "That is not possible," I said. "Ethan does not hit people." "The evidence suggests otherwise," Principal Hendricks replied. "Marcus Wheeler required medical attention." I knelt beside Ethan, keeping my voice soft. "Buddy, can you tell me what happened?" He rocked faster. Then, in fragments that took everything he had to produce, the words came. Too loud. They took them. Would not give them back. I turned to the principal. "Who took what?" Silence. Then the other mother shifted uncomfortably in her chair. Principal Hendricks cleared her throat. There was an altercation over headphones. My blood went cold. Someone took his headphones? Marcus was curious about them, the principal said. He wanted to try them on. And when Ethan tried to get them back? Marcus and his friends played keep away. It was just a game. A game. They had stolen my son's only protection against sensory overload. They had taunted him, kept his headphones out of reach, watched him spiral into panic. And when Ethan, overwhelmed and desperate, tried to defend himself, he became the problem. I stood up slowly. My fever was gone, replaced by something hotter. Let me understand this. Multiple students stole my son's medical accommodation. They taunted him. They refused to return his property. And when he reacted to their harassment, you are punishing him? Principal Hendricks held up her hands. "Mrs. Prescott, violence is never acceptable." "Neither is theft," I said. "Neither is bullying a disabled child." "Where is the suspension for Marcus Wheeler?" The other mother spoke up, tissue still pressed to her nose. "My son was just playing. Your son is the one with problems." I turned to her slowly. "My son has autism. Your son has parents who taught him it is funny to torment people who are different. Which one is the real problem?" Her face went red. "How dare you?" I ignored her and looked at Principal Hendricks. "I want documentation. I want a written report of what those boys did. I want Ethan's IEP reviewed to include anti-bullying protections. And I want a formal apology." The other mother stood up. "Apologize? For what? Your son broke my son's nose." "Your son broke my son's sense of safety," I said. "I would say we are not even close to even." I turned back to the principal. "My son is not a problem to be removed. He is a child to be protected. If this school cannot do that, I will find one that can, and I will make sure every parent in this district knows why." The room went silent. I reached for Ethan's hand. "Come on, buddy. We are going home." That evening, after Ethan had eaten his safe dinner and retreated to his room, someone knocked on our door. I opened it to find Margaret standing in the hallway, holding a casserole dish in one hand and an envelope in the other. "I figured you had not eaten," she said. "And do not argue. I made too much anyway." She pushed past me into the kitchen before I could protest. We ate in silence. I did not realize how hungry I was until I started, and then I could not stop. Margaret watched me with knowing eyes, but said nothing until I set down my fork. Then she slid the envelope across the table. "Eat first," she had said. "Then open it." I opened it. Inside was a check. $3,000. "Margaret, I cannot accept this. It is not charity," she said. "It is a loan. Pay me back when you can, or pay it forward someday. Either way, I do not want to hear arguments." I stared at the check. $3,000 would not solve everything, but it would keep the lights on, keep therapy going, buy us time to breathe. "Why?" I whispered. "Why do you care?" Margaret shrugged like it was nothing, like she had not just thrown me a lifeline. Because someone did it for me once, and because that boy in there deserves a fighting chance. That night, I could not sleep. The fever had returned, pounding behind my eyes. I got up for water and stopped outside Ethan's door. Light glowed from underneath. He should have been asleep hours ago. I opened the door quietly and found him sitting on the floor, surrounded by papers. He had drawn the room, every piece of furniture mapped to scale. But it was more than that. Small suns marked the window where morning light came in. Wavy lines near the heater indicated sound. X marks near the door showed where people might appear unexpectedly. "Buddy, what is this?" He did not look up. Safe places. Not safe places. Why? So I know before it happens. My heart cracked open. My 9-year-old son was engineering his own survival system, mapping every sensory input, every potential threat, every variable in his environment. Because the world was too unpredictable, too hostile, too overwhelming. So he was building a way to navigate it. Dr. Reyes's words echoed in my mind. His brain has gifts most people cannot see yet. I was looking at one of them. A week later, a thick envelope arrived from Morrison & Associates, the law firm my parents had used for decades. I knew what it was before I opened it. Legal language, formal tone. "We hereby notify you that Richard and Diane Prescott have amended their estate documents. You have been removed as beneficiary. This decision is final. Please do not contact our clients regarding this matter." I read it twice. Then I walked to the kitchen, held the letter over the stove burner, and watched it catch fire. The paper curled and blackened. I dropped the ashes in the sink. Ethan appeared in the doorway. "What was that?" "Nothing important," I said. He tilted his head, that look he got when he knew someone was not telling the whole truth. But he did not push. I washed the ashes down the drain and watched them disappear. My parents had officially erased me from their future. They had cut me out like a tumor, like something diseased that needed to be removed. Fine, I would build my own future. I looked at Ethan, still standing in the doorway with his maps of safe places and not safe places rolled up in his hands. We did not need their inheritance. We did not need their approval. We did not need anything from people who had looked at a 6-year-old boy and decided he was too much trouble to love. I had my son. He had me. And together, we were going to prove every single one of them wrong. Saturday mornings belonged to the library. I discovered this ritual by accident when Ethan was 8, during a disastrous trip to a crowded mall that ended with a meltdown so severe I ducked into the nearest quiet building just to escape. The Multnomah County Library, Central Branch, high ceilings, whisper quiet. The moment we walked through those doors, Ethan went still. Not frozen, not overwhelmed, peaceful. Like he had finally found a place where the world made sense. After that, Saturday mornings became sacred. We drove downtown every week, found our usual spot near the technology section, and stayed until noon. Ethan did not read fiction. He read manuals, technical guides, system documentation, books about how things worked. I brought my own book and sat nearby, letting him explore. When Ethan was 12, I noticed a flyer on the library bulletin board. Free coding club for teens, Saturdays at 2 in the afternoon. I almost walked past it. Ethan had never shown interest in group activities. He avoided other children whenever possible. But something made me stop, take a photo, show it to him later. He studied the flyer for exactly 12 seconds. "Can I go?" 3 words. Unprompted, expressing something he wanted. I tried not to show how significant this was. "Of course, buddy, we will check it out next week." He nodded once and returned to his book about network architecture. But I saw something in his eyes I had not seen in years. Anticipation. The coding club met in a basement room of the library. 8 kids ranging from 12 to 16 sat at long tables with laptops provided by the program. The instructor was Harold, a retired software engineer in his 70s, who volunteered his Saturdays to teach kids who reminded him of himself. Ethan sat in the back corner, as far from everyone else as possible. He did not speak to the other students. He barely looked at them. But when Harold started teaching Python basics on the projected screen, something changed. Ethan went motionless, but not the frozen stillness of overload. This was focus. Pure, absolute concentration. His eyes tracked every line of code like he was watching something miraculous unfold. After the first session, Harold caught me waiting outside the door. "Your son," he said. "How long has he been coding?" I blinked. He has not. This was his first time. Harold stared at me like I had told him the sky was green. That is not possible. He just wrote a sorting algorithm. From scratch. In an hour. I did not know what a sorting algorithm was, but I recognized that look on Harold's face, the same look Dr. Reyes had given me years ago when she watched Ethan organize blocks. The look that said there was more here than anyone had realized. That night, Ethan asked me a question. Can I have a computer? A real one? I thought about the bills, the budget, the endless calculations that ruled our lives. Let me see what I can do. He nodded. Then he said something that lodged in my chest and stayed there. Code makes sense. People do not. But code always does what you tell it. I understood. In a world of unpredictable humans who said one thing and meant another, code was the first language that never lied to him. Christmas that year was quiet, just the two of us in our small apartment. Ethan could not handle traditional holiday chaos, the bright lights and loud music and overwhelming stimulation. So we kept things simple. A small tree with soft white lights, his safe foods for dinner, one gift each. I had saved my holiday bonus for months, $420. I spent $318 on a refurbished laptop from a tech recycling center. Old ThinkPad, scratched case, slow processor. But it worked. I wrapped it in newspaper because he preferred that to shiny paper. He unwrapped it methodically, corner by corner, the way he did everything. When he saw what it was, he did not smile. He rarely did. But he ran his fingers over the keyboard like it was something precious. "Thank you," he said. Then he opened it, booted it up, and did not look away for 6 hours. By New Year, Ethan had taught himself HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. He coded until I made him stop, and sometimes I found him at 3 a.m, laptop glow illuminating his face while the rest of the world slept. One night I found him still awake at 2:30. "Buddy, you need sleep." "Almost done," he said. "Done with what?" He turned the screen toward me. A simple website, just text on a basic layout. But the header made my breath catch. Places that are too loud. A map. He was building something. I did not know what it would become. I just knew my son had found a language that finally made the world make sense. When Ethan was 13, I needed a file from my old laptop. Tax documents, insurance records, the endless paperwork of survival. The laptop was ancient, barely functional, but it held years of documentation I could not lose. I opened the Documents folder and saw something unexpected, a subfolder I had not created. Family Archive. I clicked. The folder opened to reveal hundreds of files, organized by date, screenshots of emails, saved text messages, voicemail transcriptions, every communication from my parents and sister over the past 8 years, cataloged and preserved. I scrolled through in disbelief. The email from my mother saying, "Please do not contact us anymore." A screenshot of a text from Victoria I had forgotten. "You made your choice. Live with it." My father's one-word reply when I had begged for help with Ethan's surgery. No. A voicemail from Diane I had never listened to, transcribed in careful detail. "We are updating our will. You should know you are not included. 8 years of rejection, 8 years of cruelty, documented, time-stamped, preserved." I called Ethan into the room. "Did you save all of this?" He looked at the screen, nodded. "Why?" He considered the question the way he considered everything, carefully and thoroughly. Patterns reveal truth over time. People forget what they said. Data does not. I felt a chill run down my spine. "You have been documenting them for 8 years?" 11, he said. "I started saving things before I understood why. I just knew something was wrong. Patterns told me to keep records." He was 6 years old when we left. He had been watching, recording, remembering since the very beginning. "I am not angry," he added quietly. "I just wanted proof, in case anyone ever asked what really happened." At 14, Ethan caught the attention of someone who would change everything. Marcus Webb was 45 years old, the founder of a small accessibility tech startup called OpenPath. He visited the library coding club looking for young talent, neurodivergent kids with potential who might benefit from mentorship and resources. Harold pointed him toward Ethan. Marcus approached carefully, sitting nearby without crowding, looking at Ethan's screen without demanding attention. "That is interesting," he said. "What does it do?" Ethan did not make eye contact, but he did not retreat either. It maps sensory data, noise levels, light intensity, crowd density. "Where does the data come from?" "I collect it, manually, for now." Marcus asked technical questions, the kind that showed he actually understood what Ethan was building. Ethan answered more in those 10 minutes than I had heard him speak to a stranger in years. Before Marcus left, he asked one final question. "Why are you building this?" Ethan paused, looked at his hands. "Because I wish I had it. When I walk into a room, I do not know if it is safe. I have to guess. If I guess wrong, everything falls apart." Marcus nodded slowly. "What if you did not have to guess?" Ethan looked up then, rare direct eye contact. "That is what I am trying to build." Marcus handed me his card. "I would like to mentor him," he said, "if you are open to it." 2 weeks later, I was reviewing Marcus's mentorship proposal when my phone buzzed. Instagram notification. I barely used social media, but the name caught my eye. Lily V. 2007. Lily, Victoria's daughter, now 16 years old. I had not heard from her since the postcard stopped 5 years ago. The message was short. "Aunt Julia, I know we have not talked in forever. I need to tell you something important. About Grandma and Grandpa. Can we talk?" My heart pounded. 8 years of silence, and now this, I typed back. "Lily, is everything okay?" 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then her reply came through. "They have been watching you, both of you. More than you know. I found something I think you should see." Watching us. My stomach turned. How? Why? I stared at the screen, thinking about Ethan's folder full of evidence, 11 years of documentation. He had been watching them. Apparently, they had been watching right back. I typed quickly, "When can we talk?" Lily's response came immediately. "Tomorrow, but do not tell anyone. Especially not Mom." I set down the phone and walked to Ethan's door. He was at his computer, headphones on, lost in his work. On his screen, the early prototype of his sensory mapping app glowed with possibility. He was building a tool to navigate hostile environments. He did not know it yet, but he was going to need it. We both were. The family that had thrown us away was still watching, still waiting. And now, finally, the walls were starting to crack. I waited until Ethan left for his Saturday coding session with Marcus before I opened the laptop for my call with Lily. My hands were shaking as I sat at the kitchen table, heart pounding in my chest. The video call connected, and there she was. Victoria's daughter, now 16 years old, looking over her shoulder nervously. She was sitting in a car, parked somewhere private, and even through the grainy connection I could see dark circles under her eyes. The 8-year-old who had sent crayon postcards had become a young woman carrying a weight too heavy for her age. "I do not have much time," she said, her voice hushed and fast. "Mom thinks I am at volleyball practice." "Lily, what is going on? Grandma and Grandpa have been tracking you, both of you, for years." My blood went cold. "What do you mean tracking? Social media alerts, Google notifications set up for your names. Every article about Ethan's coding achievements, they have read it." "They have a folder, Aunt Julia. A whole folder of printouts about everything he has done." I felt the room tilt around me. They had cut us off completely, refused contact, sent lawyers to remove me from their will, and the whole time they had been watching. "Why?" I managed to ask. "They threw us away. They made it clear they wanted nothing to do with us." Lily hesitated, glancing at her rearview mirror. "Because they are waiting." "Waiting for what?" "I do not know exactly. But I heard Grandpa tell Mom last month. He said if that boy ever amounts to anything, we need to be ready to act." My hands gripped the edge of the table. "Act how?" Lily's eyes darted nervously. I have to go. But Aunt Julia, whatever Ethan is building, they know about it. And they are paying attention. The call ended. I sat in the silence of my kitchen, trying to process what I had just learned. For 9 years, I had believed we were invisible to them. Erased, forgotten. But they had been watching the whole time, waiting for my son to become valuable enough to reclaim. The crude website Ethan had built at 13 had evolved into something remarkable. He called it Sensor Map now, a full mobile application that Marcus had helped him develop over the past year. Marcus provided resources, development tools, cloud hosting, user testing frameworks. But the vision was entirely Ethan's. The app allowed users to scan a location and input data about lighting levels, noise intensity, crowd density, exit locations. It aggregated community data, building a database of sensory-friendly spaces across the city. Color-coded ratings showed users what to expect before they walked through a door. Green meant safe. Yellow meant caution. Red meant overwhelming. I visited during a testing session at Marcus's home office. Ethan demonstrated how it worked, more animated than I had ever seen him. Before you walk into a restaurant, he explained, you can see if the music is loud, if the lights are fluorescent, if it gets crowded on Saturday nights. Who adds this information? I asked. Everyone. Users report their experiences. The data gets better over time. Patterns emerge. Marcus pulled me aside afterward. He is brilliant, he said, you know that. But there is something else. What? He does not just want to help people avoid bad environments. He wants to prove that their struggles are real, that sensory overload is not weakness, it is data, measurable, valid. I thought of every doctor who had told me Ethan was overreacting, every teacher who had dismissed his needs as behavioral problems. My son was building scientific proof that he and people like him had been right all along. Dr. Reyes had watched Ethan grow for 9 years. When she saw Sensor Map, she understood immediately what it could mean. This could help so many of my clients, she said. So many families struggling the way you struggled. She asked permission to share it with her professional network, and I agreed. Word traveled through the autism therapy community faster than I expected. 3 therapists in Portland started recommending it to their clients, then a special education coordinator in Salem, then a sensory integration clinic in Eugene. The app spread through whispered recommendations and desperate parent forums. Emails started arriving, not to Marcus, but directly to Ethan. His contact information was on the app, and people wanted him to know what he had built. A mother from Bend wrote that her daughter had attended a birthday party for the first time because she had checked Sensor Map beforehand. No meltdown. She stayed the whole time. A father from Medford said his son had used the app before a job interview, found the quiet room in advance, and gotten the position. An autistic adult from Seattle, 43 years old, wrote something that made me cry. This is the first time something was built for me, not just about me. Ethan read every message without visible reaction, but I noticed his hands were not fidgeting. He was calm, certain. They are not just using it, he said quietly. They are adding to it, making it better. His vision was working. The patterns were multiplying. Marcus had connections in the accessibility tech world. He had been talking about Sensor Map to colleagues for months, and one of those conversations reached someone at Cascade Accessibility Ventures, a small investment firm that specialized in technology serving disabled communities. The managing partner was Diana Cho, known for patient investment strategies and genuine commitment to the field. She reviewed the app, the user data, the growth metrics. Then she requested a meeting. Diana met with Marcus and me at a coffee shop in the Pearl District. Ethan attended via video call because crowds were still difficult for him. She asked technical questions that Ethan answered with precise detail. She asked market questions that Marcus handled smoothly. Then she asked one personal question. Ethan, why did you build this? Because I needed it, he said. And if I needed it, others do too. Diana nodded slowly. We would like to discuss a seed investment. Based on current traction and projected growth, Our preliminary valuation is in the range of $1.2 million. I stopped breathing. $1.2 million? For something my son had built in his bedroom on a laptop I bought with a Christmas bonus. Ethan's expression did not change, but I saw his fingers tap 3 times on his desk. His pattern for processing big information. He was calculating, preparing, understanding exactly what this number meant. The investment closed 3 months later, $250,000 for an equity stake that would fund real development. Ethan hired a part-time developer, improved the interface, expanded the database. SensorMap launched officially on app stores, and the downloads started climbing. 1,000, 5,000, 15,000. Media attention followed, local news features, disability advocacy blogs, a mention in a tech accessibility newsletter that went viral in certain circles. Schools started implementing it formally, not just individual parents but entire district programs. By the time Ethan turned 17, the numbers had exceeded every projection. The revenue model took shape, free for individuals, subscription pricing for institutions. Cascade brought in a co-investor for Series A discussions. The new valuation made my head spin. $3.7 million. I watched the numbers on the investor dashboard Marcus had shared with me, unable to fully comprehend what I was seeing. My son, the boy my family had called too much to handle, had built something worth $3.7 million. I should have felt only joy. But something else gnawed at me. Lily's warning echoed in my mind. If that boy ever amounts to anything, we need to be ready to act. Ethan had amounted to something. I wondered how long before they made their move. 2 weeks after the valuation became public, I came home from work to find a bouquet on my doorstep. Expensive arrangement, white lilies and roses and eucalyptus, professionally wrapped by a high-end florist. My hands trembled as I picked it up. A small card was tucked inside the cellophane. The message was written in elegant script. We have been watching Ethan's success with great pride. Families should celebrate together. Perhaps it is time to reconnect. With love, Mom and Dad. No return address, no phone number, just the implication. We know, we see, we are ready. I stood in the doorway, unable to move. 11 years of silence. 11 years of doing everything alone, fighting every battle without backup, building a life from nothing while they pretended we did not exist. And now that there was money, they were proud. I carried the flowers inside and set them on the counter. I did not throw them away. Evidence, I thought, just like Ethan taught me. That evening, I showed Ethan the card. He read it once, twice, 3 times. His expression did not change. They waited until the valuation was public, he said. How do you know it was public? Tech blogs, investor announcements. I set alerts for my own name 3 years ago. I knew they would see it eventually. I stared at my son. You expected this? He nodded. Patterns. They ignored us when we had nothing. They will return when we have something. Basic human behavior. What do? Ethan looked at me with those steady gray-blue eyes. We wait. We document. And when they make their move, we will be ready. He returned to his computer and pulled up the family archive folder. 11 years of evidence. Waiting. I watched my 17-year-old son prepare for a battle I had hoped would never come, but it was coming. I could feel it in my bones. The family that had thrown us away was circling back, drawn by the scent of money like sharks to blood. They thought Ethan was still that vulnerable 6-year-old they had discarded. They thought I was still that desperate young mother they had abandoned. They had no idea what we had become. I took a photo of the flowers, the card, the message, added it to the folder. The first entry in what I knew would be a new chapter. They were watching us. But we were watching back. And we had 11 years of truth on our side. The phone rang while I was making dinner 3 weeks after the flowers arrived. Ethan's safe foods, same as always, plain pasta and apple slices and exactly 7 goldfish crackers. My cell buzzed on the counter, an unknown number with a 503 area code. I almost ignored it. Telemarketers, probably. Bill collectors. Nothing I wanted to deal with. But something made me answer. Julia? The voice on the other end made my blood freeze. It is Mom. I could not move. The spatula slipped from my hand and clattered against the stove. 11 years. 11 years of silence, of ignored calls and returned letters and lawyers delivering messages instead of parents. And now my mother's voice, soft and trembling, as if nothing had happened. I know we have not spoken in so long. I think about you and Ethan every day. I could not find words. My throat had locked shut. We made mistakes, Julia. Your father and I, we were scared. We did not understand Ethan's condition. But we have learned so much since then. I finally managed to speak. You kicked us out. You told me my son was too much for you. A pause on the other end. Then, in a voice dripping with rehearsed confusion, that is not how I remember it, sweetheart. My blood turned to ice. Not how she remembered it. 11 years of therapy bills and sleepless nights and fighting every battle alone, and my mother was rewriting history like it was a rough draft she could revise. We would love to see you both, she continued, to reconnect, as a family. Behind me, I heard Ethan's door open. He was listening. Of course he was. I will think about it, I said, and I hung up before she could say another word. Ethan stood in the hallway when I turned around. You heard? He nodded. What do you think? His fingers tapped against his thigh, the pattern he used when processing complex information. We should meet them. Absolutely not, I said. They do not deserve to see you after what they did. It is not about what they deserve. It is about information. I stared at him. He continued calmly. They are making a move. We need to understand what kind. A meeting will tell us more than avoiding them. You want to walk into their trap? I want to see what the trap looks like, so we can build a better one. I realized something had shifted between us. For 11 years I had been protecting him. Now he was strategizing for both of us. My 17-year-old autistic son was thinking 3 moves ahead while I was still reacting to the last one. You have been preparing for this, I said. Ethan met my eyes, rare and deliberate. I have been preparing since I was 8. A chill ran through me that had nothing to do with fear. It was recognition. My son was not the vulnerable child they remembered. He was something else entirely, and they had no idea what was coming. The restaurant my parents chose was in the Pearl District, a place called Andina, with white tablecloths and soft lighting and prices that made my stomach turn. They insisted on paying, of course. Everything about this meeting was designed to remind me of what they had and what I did not. Ethan and I arrived first, a strategic choice. He wore his noise-canceling headphones around his neck, ready if he needed them. His eyes moved across the room the moment we walked in, cataloging exits and light sources and noise levels. Yellow zone, he murmured. Manageable. I squeezed his hand once. He did not pull away. They arrived together. Richard and Diane Prescott, both in their late 60s now, dressed like they were attending a charity gala. My father's silver hair was perfectly styled, his expensive watch catching the light as he moved. My mother looked softer than I remembered, more fragile, dabbing her eyes with a tissue before she even reached our table. Behind them came Victoria, 44 years old now, dressed like she was attending a board meeting instead of a family dinner. Her husband Bradley was absent. Her children were not mentioned. This was not a reunion. This was business. My mother reached for Ethan first, arms outstretched. Oh, my grandson, look how tall you are. Ethan did not move, did not speak, just observed, cataloging every gesture and expression the way he cataloged everything else. My father shook my hand, not a hug but a handshake, like I was a client he was meeting for the first time. You look well, Julia. Considering everything. Considering everything. I swallowed the response I wanted to give and sat down. The dinner unfolded like a carefully choreographed performance. My mother asked about my job, my apartment, my support system. Every question felt like data collection, information gathering for some purpose I could not yet see. Victoria filled the silences with stories about her children's achievements, private schools and travel teams, and summer programs in Europe. The implication hung in the air like smoke. We have resources you do not. Ethan said nothing throughout the meal. He ate the plain bread that was the only safe food on the menu and watched everyone with those steady gray-blue eyes. After the entrees arrived, my father cleared his throat. That same throat clear from 11 years ago, the one that preceded bad news and worse decisions. Julia, we have been thinking about Ethan's future. I set down my fork. His app, Sensor Map is very impressive indeed. But that kind of money needs proper management. He has management, I said. He has a mentor and an investment team. My father waved his hand dismissively. Outsiders, strangers. What Ethan needs is family looking out for his interests. Victoria leaned forward. We would like to establish a family trust, pool resources, protect Ethan's assets from exploitation. My father nodded. There are people who take advantage of young people with disabilities. We just want to make sure he is protected by the family that had abandoned him when he was 6 years old because he was too much trouble. I felt Ethan tense beside me. I looked at each of them in turn, my mother with her practiced tears, my sister with her rehearsed concern, my father with his calculating eyes. Let me make sure I understand this, I said. For 11 years, you had no interest in Ethan. No birthday cards, no holiday calls, no help when I begged for money to pay for his surgery. Julia, my mother started. No, you do not get to interrupt. I spent 11 years raising him alone, figuring out IEPs and sensory diets and meltdowns at 2 a.m. while you pretended we did not exist. And now that he has built something valuable, suddenly you want to protect him? The table went silent. My father's face hardened. You are being emotional. We are offering help. Help would have been 11 years ago. This is not help. This is an acquisition. Victoria's voice turned sharp. You have always been dramatic. We are trying to do what is best for Ethan. I turned to my son. What do you think? Everyone looked at him. Ethan had been silent the entire dinner, invisible the way they had always preferred him. Now he looked at his grandparents, his aunt, one by one. You have not asked me a single question about the app, about how it works, about why I built it, about who it helps. My mother blinked. Well, we just assumed you would tell us if you wanted to. You asked about money, management, control, but not about what it does. He paused, his voice flat and certain. That tells me everything I need to know about your intentions. My father's face turned red. I had never been prouder of my son. The gloves came off after that. My father threw his napkin on the table. Fine, you want to do this the hard way. What do you mean? Ethan is a minor. He is autistic. The court takes a very serious view of protecting vulnerable individuals from undue influence. My stomach dropped. Victoria smiled, cold and satisfied. We have already consulted with attorneys. There are legal avenues for family to petition for involvement in a minor's financial decisions. My mother added softly, We do not want it to come to that. We are just worried about you both. I stood up, pulling Ethan with me. If you file anything, I said, anything at all, I will fight you with everything I have. My father smiled, condescending and cold. With what, Julia? Your salary from a community clinic? We have resources you cannot imagine. I held his gaze without flinching. You have money. I have 11 years of evidence. Let us see which one matters more in court. I walked out of that restaurant with my son beside me. My hands were shaking, but my voice had not wavered, not once. 4 days later, a thick manila envelope arrived in our mailbox. Return address, Morrison and Price, attorneys at law, Lake Oswego. I knew what it was before I opened it. Legal petition filed with Multnomah County Court. Emergency motion for financial guardianship of a vulnerable minor. They were claiming Ethan could not manage his own affairs because of his disability. They were claiming I had isolated him from family support. They were requesting court-appointed oversight of all financial decisions. Hearing date, 3 weeks from now. I read the petition twice. Then I walked to Ethan's room and knocked. He was at his computer working on sensor map updates. They filed, I said. He did not look surprised. I know. I set up alerts for our names in court databases. Of course he had. What do we do now? Ethan turned to face me. Now we find a lawyer, and we show them what 11 years of documentation looks like. I looked at my son, this quiet, brilliant person they had thrown away like he was nothing. They thought he was vulnerable. They thought he was a target. They had no idea they were walking into a trap he had been building since before they decided to spring theirs. I know a lawyer, I said. Margaret's nephew, Daniel Okonkwo, specializes in disability rights. Ethan nodded. Call him tonight. I picked up my phone. The battle had officially begun, and for the first time, I realized we might actually have a chance to win. Daniel Okonkwo's law office sat on Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, in a building that had seen better decades. The carpet was worn. The chairs were mismatched. Stacks of files covered every available surface. But the walls told a different story. Framed newspaper clippings about landmark disability rights cases, awards from advocacy organizations, photos of Daniel shaking hands with activists and lawmakers I recognized from the news. This man had been fighting battles like ours for 20 years. Margaret's nephew had built his reputation one case at a time, and now I was sitting across from him, praying he could help us win. Daniel was in his early 50s, Nigerian-American, with a salt-and-pepper beard and eyes that missed nothing. He spoke slowly, every word deliberate and precise. He read the petition my family had filed twice without expression. Then he set it down and looked at me. They are claiming Ethan is a vulnerable adult who cannot manage his own affairs. He is 17, I said. He built a company worth $3.7 million. Daniel nodded. That is the irony they are counting on. They will argue his success proves he needs protection. That someone must be manipulating him to achieve results like this. Someone meaning me. Exactly. They will paint you as the puppet master, Ethan as the victim, themselves as the rescuers. I felt the air leave my lungs. The room seemed smaller suddenly, the walls pressing in. I will not lie to you, Julia, Daniel continued. Oregon courts give significant weight to extended family in cases like this. Your parents have money, connections, and a narrative that sounds sympathetic on paper. So, we are going to lose? I did not say that. I said we need to be prepared. They have resources. We need something better. What is better than resources? Daniel looked at me steadily. The truth. Documented, time-stamped, and undeniable. I thought of Ethan's folder. 11 years of evidence. I think we might have that. Daniel outlined our defense strategy with the precision of a surgeon planning an operation. Step 1. File a counter-petition arguing Ethan is competent to make his own decisions. Step 2. Gather character witnesses who can testify to my parenting and Ethan's capabilities. Step 3. Present documentation proving the family abandoned us, not the other way around. Their lawyer is Harrison Burke, Daniel added, senior partner at Morrison and Price. He is good. How good? He has never lost a guardianship case in Multnomah County. The words hit me like a physical blow. Never lost. We were going up against someone who had never lost, with nothing but the truth and a folder full of old emails. But Burke relies on emotion, Daniel continued. Sympathetic grandparents, worried family members, tearful testimony about wanting to help. He assumes the other side will not fight back with facts. You said Ethan has documentation? Everything, I said. Every email, every text, every voicemail from the past 11 years. He kept records? He is autistic. Patterns matter to him. He documented everything because he knew someday someone would lie about what really happened. Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then something like admiration crossed his face. I have been doing this work for 2 decades. I have never had a client come in with that level of preparation. He looked toward the door where Ethan was waiting. That young man is not a victim. He is a witness, and he might be the best one I have ever had. That night, I was reviewing files Daniel had requested when my email pinged. New message from an address I did not recognize. No reply at protonmail.com. The subject line read, "A friendly warning." My stomach tightened as I clicked. Julia, you cannot win this. They have more money, better lawyers, and the court's sympathy. Drop the fight, accept a settlement, take whatever they offer, and move on. Continuing this will only hurt Ethan. Is your pride worth his future? Someone who cares. The tone was Victoria's, that same condescending concern she had perfected over 44 years of being the favorite daughter. But the anonymous account made it impossible to prove. Someone who cares. The audacity made me sick. I realized what this was. Psychological warfare. They were not just attacking us legally, they were trying to break me before we even got to court. Make me doubt, make me feel alone, make me give up. I screenshotted the email and saved it to the evidence folder. Then I typed a response, just 2 words. Watch me. I did not send it. But I kept it in my drafts, a reminder to myself of who I was becoming. Margaret found me in the break room the next day, staring at cold coffee I had forgotten to drink. "You look like hell," she said. I laughed, despite myself. "Thanks. I feel worse." She sat across from me with the same directness she had shown 11 years ago when she first handed me that folder of resources. "Daniel called me, told me what is happening. I want to testify." "Margaret, you do not have to do this. 11 years, Julia. I have watched you raise that boy for 11 years. I saw you come to work on 3 hours of sleep. I saw you cry in the bathroom when insurance denied coverage. I saw you fight every school, every doctor, every system that tried to push Ethan aside." She leaned forward. "And I never once saw those people who call themselves his family." My eyes stung. Margaret reached across the table and took my hand. "Family is not just blood. You taught me that. Now let me show the court what real family looks like." "They will try to discredit you," I said. "Say you are biased because we are friends." Margaret shrugged. "I have been called worse. And I have got 11 years of watching you do the impossible. Let them try to discredit that." That evening, Lily called. Her face appeared on my screen, pale and tired, sitting in her car in some dark parking lot. "Aunt Julia, I heard about the lawsuit." "How? Mom will not stop talking about it. She is excited. Like she is winning something." Lily's voice dropped. "There is more. Mom and Grandpa have been rehearsing." "Rehearsing what?" "Their testimony. What to say about you, about Ethan. They have been practicing how to sound concerned without sounding angry." Her eyes met mine through the screen. "They do not care about Ethan. They never talk about him as a person. Just as an asset. Something to control." "I want to testify," she said. "For you, for Ethan." "Lily, if you do that, your mother will never forgive you. Your grandparents will cut you off. I know, you could lose everything. I already lost the family I thought I had. The day I realized they threw out a 6-year-old boy because he was different. She was 18 years old, about to blow up her entire life for the truth." "I cannot ask you to do this," I said. "You are not asking. I am choosing." Her eyes were fierce, nothing like Victoria's. I have spent my whole life pretending our family is normal, pretending what they did was okay. I am done pretending. The truth matters more than their money. 3 a.m, the night before we filed our counterpetition. I could not sleep. Tomorrow, the real battle began. I sat at the kitchen table surrounded by documents, printouts, highlighters, 11 years of survival spread across the surface like evidence of a crime. I picked up a photo from the stack, Ethan at 8 years old, holding a certificate from his first coding class. He did not smile in the picture, he rarely did. But afterward in the car he had said I made something work today. I had cried then too. Now the tears were different. I put my head in my hands and sobbed. 11 years of holding it together. 11 years of being strong because no one else would be. And now my own family wanted to take my son away, wanted to call me a bad mother, wanted to label him incapable. I cried for every sleepless night, every denied insurance claim, every time someone looked at Ethan like he was broken. A hand touched my shoulder. I looked up. Ethan stood there in his pajamas, his face unreadable in the dim light. He hated being touched. He avoided physical contact almost always. But his hand stayed on my shoulder, warm and steady. "Mom." I wiped my face. "I am sorry. I did not mean to wake you." "You did not. I was working." He sat down across from me, which was rare. He usually stood. "I know you are scared." I could not deny it. "I am. They think they know what they are walking into. They do not." He opened his laptop and turned it toward me. The family archive folder, but different now. Organized, indexed, cross-referenced, every email with timestamp and metadata intact, every text message with carrier records, every voicemail transcribed and dated. "I added context," he said. "Correlations, patterns of behavior over time." I stared at the screen. "Ethan, when did you do all this? I have been building it for years, but I finished organizing it this week." He looked at me with those steady gray-blue eyes. "They think I am the vulnerable one. They think you are the manipulator. But I have every word they ever said, every promise they broke, every lie they told." He closed the laptop. "Tomorrow we file, and then we show them what 11 years of truth looks like." I looked at my son, this quiet, methodical, extraordinary person they had called too much. He had been preparing for this moment longer than anyone knew. "You really think we can win?" I asked. He nodded once. "I do not think. I know, because patterns do not lie. And theirs is very clear. Tomorrow the counter-petition would be filed, and the family that had thrown us away was about to discover what they had left behind. Not a burden, not a broken child, a witness, with receipts." 1 week before the hearing, Daniel Okonkwo sat across from us in his conference room, staring at the wall where Ethan's evidence was projected. A timeline stretched across the screen, 11 years of data points, hundreds of documents organized by date and category. Daniel had not spoken in 10 minutes. He just stared, his legal pad forgotten in his lap, his pen motionless in his hand. I had never seen a lawyer rendered speechless before. Ethan walked us through the archive with the same precision he brought to everything. 214 emails, 47 text message threads, 31 voicemails, 12 legal documents, every item timestamped, metadata verified, organized into categories. He had color-coded everything, red for rejection, yellow for manipulation, blue for financial discussions. The pattern of cruelty stretched across the wall like a medical chart documenting a terminal illness. Daniel finally spoke. "How long have you been building this?" "Active collection since I was 8, Ethan said. "Systematic organization started when I was 14. 9 years of documentation," Daniel said, almost to himself. 11, Ethan corrected. "I started saving things before I understood why. I just knew something was wrong. Patterns told me to keep records." Daniel turned to me. "Did you know about all of this?" I shook my head. I knew he saved things. I did not know it was this comprehensive. Ethan's voice was matter of fact, as if he were explaining how a computer program worked. "I did not keep these because I am angry. I kept them because people lie. Data does not. Someday I knew someone would try to rewrite history. I wanted the original version preserved." Daniel leaned back in his chair. "In 20 years of practice, I have never seen anything like this." He looked at Ethan with something close to admiration. "You built a case before anyone knew there would be one." Daniel pulled up the first key document. An email from Victoria to me sent 3 years after we left. The subject line read, "Please read and respect our wishes." The body was worse. "Julia, I am asking you one final time to stop trying to contact Mom and Dad. Your presence and Ethan's is too disruptive. He frightens my children. We have moved on. You should too. Do not respond to this email." Daniel highlighted a phrase. "She explicitly states Ethan frightens her children. That directly contradicts their current claim of loving concern." The next document was a voicemail from my mother, dated 2 years later. Daniel played the audio, and Diane Prescott's voice filled the room, cold and clear. "Julia, I do not know why you keep calling. We have made our position clear. We are not responsible for that child. You chose to keep him when you could have found other arrangements. That was your decision. Live with it." I remembered that day. I had called begging for help with medical bills. Ethan needed surgery, and insurance had denied coverage. Other arrangements. My mother had suggested giving my son away. Daniel paused the recording. "She says that child. Not our grandson. Not Ethan. That child." I nodded, throat tight. She has never called him by name. Not once in 11 years. Ethan's fingers tapped once, twice, 3 times against his thigh, his processing pattern. He was filing this away, adding it to the archive in his mind. The final key document was a text exchange between my father and me from 3 years ago. I had kept the screenshots but had tried to forget the words. Daniel read them aloud. Julia writes, "Dad, Ethan needs surgery. Insurance will not cover it. I am asking for help, please." Richard Prescott replies, "You made your choice when you walked out. We have no obligation to fund it." Julia writes, "He is your grandson." Richard Prescott replies, "He is your responsibility. Do not contact me about money again." Daniel looked at the Prescott family's petition sitting on the table. "This directly contradicts their claim that you isolated Ethan from family. They rejected every single attempt at contact." Then Ethan pulled up one more document. "This one arrived 3 months ago," he said, "before the lawsuit was filed." An email chain appeared on the screen, forwarded accidentally. The sender was Victoria Prescott. The recipient was Harrison Burke, attorney at law, and in the CC line, my own email address. Victoria had meant to forward the message to Burke but hit reply all instead. A simple mistake, a devastating one. Daniel read the email aloud. Subject, strategy discussion, Ethan Prescott matter. Victoria writes, "Harrison, we need to move quickly. The valuation is public now. If we wait until he turns 18, we lose any legal standing. We need to establish control over the finances before he ages out of minor status. Mother and father agree. This needs to happen in the next few months." The room went silent. Daniel read it twice more. Then a slow, predatory smile spread across his face. "She put their entire strategy in writing. And sent it to you by accident." "I did not realize what it was at first," I said. "Ethan flagged it." Ethan nodded. "She used reply all instead of forward." Common error. But the metadata shows it was intentional correspondence with their lawyer discussing strategy to establish control before I turn 18. Daniel closed his notebook. "This is not just evidence. This is admission of motive. They are not seeking guardianship to protect Ethan. They are seeking it to control his money before he legally becomes an adult." "Can we use it?" I asked. "They sent it to you. It is not privileged communication once a third party receives it." Daniel stood and walked to the window. "They just handed us the case." The strategy session that followed felt like planning a military operation. "Their lawyer, Harrison Burke, has a pattern," Daniel explained. "He leads with emotion. Sympathetic grandparents, worried family members, tearful testimony about wanting to help. We let them talk first." I frowned. Why give them that advantage? Because they do not know what we have. They think this is about narrative. They will paint themselves as loving family members who were pushed away. They will claim you manipulated Ethan, isolated him, turned him against them. And then? And then we present the evidence. Every email where they rejected you, every voicemail where they refused responsibility, every text where they denied help. We let them tell their version. Then we show what actually happened, Ethan spoke up. They will contradict themselves, they always do. People who lie have to remember their lies. The truth is consistent because it actually happened. Daniel looked at Ethan directly. "I need to ask you something important. Are you prepared to testify?" "Yes. It will not be easy. Burke will try to rattle you, make you seem unstable or confused. He will try to use my autism against me, make the court think I cannot be a reliable witness. And? Ethan's voice was calm. And he will fail, because I do not speak in emotions. I speak in facts. Facts do not get rattled. The night before the hearing, I could not sleep. I stood at the window of our apartment watching Portland's lights flicker in the rain. Tomorrow, everything would change, one way or another. My mind raced through worst-case scenarios. What if the judge did not believe us? What if Burke twisted Ethan's testimony? What if my parents' money and connections outweighed 11 years of documented truth? What if I lost my son? Ethan appeared in the doorway. You are catastrophizing. I laughed despite myself. Is it that obvious? Your breathing pattern changed. You are standing still, but your shoulders are tense. Classic anxiety indicators. Thank you for the diagnosis, Dr. Ethan. He almost smiled. I turned to face him. Are you scared? He considered the question the way he considered everything, carefully and thoroughly. I was scared for 11 years. Every time I walked into a new room, every time someone looked at me like I was broken, every time I wondered if you would leave too. Ethan, I would never. I know. That is why I am not scared anymore. I spent 11 years documenting the people who left. Tomorrow, I get to show the court who stayed. The morning of the hearing, I woke before my alarm. Gray light filtered through the curtains. Rain was still falling. My stomach was in knots. I checked my phone out of habit and found a message from Lily, sent at 5:47 in the morning. Aunt Julia. I will be there today. I am coming to testify. Mom does not know yet. She will soon. But I wanted you to know first. Whatever happens, I am choosing the right side. See you at the courthouse. I typed back. Are you sure? 3 dots appeared immediately. Then her reply. I have never been more sure of anything. Truth matters. Family is not who shares your blood. It is who shares your values. See you soon. I set down the phone and walked to Ethan's room. Knocked once. It is time to get ready. The door opened immediately. He was already dressed, headphones around his neck, folder in his hands. I know, he said. I have been ready for 11 years. We drove to the courthouse in silence. The rain had stopped. Weak sunlight broke through the clouds. I thought about what was waiting for us. My parents, my sister, lawyers, a judge who would decide our fate. But I also thought about what was beside me. My son, calm and prepared, holding 11 years of truth in a folder on his lap. And what was coming to meet us. Lily, ready to sacrifice everything for what was right. We were not alone. We had never been alone. We just had not known who our real family was until now. The courthouse appeared ahead. I took a breath. Let them talk. Let them lie. Let them perform their rehearsed concern. The truth was about to have its turn. The Multnomah County Courthouse loomed gray against a clearing sky as I pulled into the parking garage. My hands were steady on the wheel, steadier than I expected. 11 years of preparation had led to this moment. Beside me, Ethan sat with his eyes closed and his headphones on, not sleeping but processing, preparing. We walked through security together, metal detectors and bag checks, and the institutional smell of floor polish and anxiety. Daniel met us in the lobby, briefcase in hand, expression calm but alert. They are already here, he said quietly. Arrived 20 minutes ago. Making a show of it. I looked toward the elevator bank and saw them. My parents stood near the window, perfectly dressed, speaking with Harrison Burke in low tones. My father's silver hair caught the light. My mother dabbed her eyes with a tissue, warming up her performance before we even entered the courtroom. Victoria stood slightly apart, checking her phone every few minutes, not a hair out of place. For a moment, my mother's eyes met mine across the lobby. Something flickered across her face. Guilt, perhaps, or recognition, or fear. Then it was gone, replaced by that practiced look of wounded concern. She leaned toward my father and whispered something. He glanced over, his face stone. "She is warming up," Daniel murmured. Classic Burke playbook. Establish the grieving grandmother narrative before we even get started. Ethan's hand brushed against mine, brief and intentional. His way of saying I see it too. "We are ready." Courtroom 4. B was smaller than I expected, nothing like the grand chambers I had seen on television. Wood paneling lined the walls. Fluorescent lights had been dimmed per Ethan's approved accommodation. 2 tables faced the judge's bench. Plaintiff on the left, respondent on the right. We took our positions. Daniel beside me, Ethan on my other side. Across the aisle, my family arranged themselves with the practiced ease of people accustomed to being watched. Harrison Burke shuffled papers with the confidence of a man who had never lost. All rise. The Honorable Judge Patricia Hendricks presiding. Judge Hendricks entered, 60 years old with gray hair pulled back severely and reading glasses perched on her nose. She sat, reviewed papers, looked up. Her eyes moved across the room, landing briefly on Ethan, then me, then the Prescott family. No expression, no tells. "This court is convened to hear the matter of Prescott versus Prescott, petition for financial guardianship of a minor." My stomach tightened. Prescott versus Prescott. My own name weaponized against me. "I have reviewed the filings," the judge continued. "This is a serious matter involving a minor's autonomy and welfare. I expect professionalism from all parties." Her gaze lingered on Harrison Burke. "Counselor, you may begin." Burke rose smoothly, buttoned his jacket, approached the bench. "Your Honor, this case is about one thing: protecting a vulnerable young man from exploitation." His voice was warm and practiced, designed to sound reasonable. Ethan Prescott is a remarkable teenager. Despite his autism diagnosis, he has achieved extraordinary things, but that very success has made him a target. Burke painted his picture with broad strokes. Concerned grandparents, a family torn apart by my erratic behavior. 11 years ago, Julia Prescott made a choice. She chose to isolate her son from his extended family. She refused offers of help, rejected attempts at reconciliation, and systematically cut Ethan off from the people who loved him. I felt Daniel's hand on my arm. "Wait." "Now," Burke continued, "Ethan has created something valuable, and we must ask ourselves who is truly looking out for his interests. A mother who has kept him isolated, or a family who has watched from afar, waiting for the right moment to help." He returned to his seat, satisfied. "We are not seeking to remove Ethan from his mother's care. We are seeking court-appointed oversight to ensure his financial interests are protected. A guardian ad litem, a trust structure. Reasonable safeguards for a young man who, due to his disability, may not fully understand the implications of decisions being made on his behalf." I wanted to scream, watched from afar, waiting for the right moment to help. They had watched, yes, but not to help. They had watched and waited for money. I glanced at Ethan. His face was blank, but his fingers tapped 3 times against his thigh. He was counting lies. The count was already high. The petitioner calls Diane Prescott. My mother approached the witness stand like she was walking to receive an award. Composed, dignified, tissue already in hand. Burke guided her through preliminary questions. Name, relationship to Ethan, background. Then the performance began. "Mrs. Prescott, can you describe your relationship with your grandson?" "We love Ethan deeply," my mother said, voice trembling. "We have always loved him. When he was diagnosed with autism, it was devastating. For all of us." "And what happened after the diagnosis?" "Julia became very protective. Understandably so. But over time, she began pushing us away. She stopped bringing Ethan to family gatherings. She refused our offers of financial help. Eventually, she cut off contact entirely. Did you try to maintain the relationship?" "Constantly. We sent cards, gifts, messages. But Julia intercepted everything. Ethan never knew we were reaching out. Her voice broke on cue. I have missed 11 years of my grandson's life, 11 birthdays, 11 Christmases. I just want to be part of his world again. I just want to make sure he is protected. Burke nodded sympathetically. And what concerns you about Ethan's current situation? Julia has no financial background. She works at a clinic, a very modest salary. Meanwhile, Ethan's company is worth millions. She is not equipped to guide him through decisions of this magnitude. When you say millions, can you specify? My mother paused. Considered. I believe it is valued at around $4 million. Wrong. The public valuation was $3.7 million. A small error. But I filed it away. Daniel made a note on his legal pad. My mother did not know the actual number because she had never actually cared about the work. Only the money. Daniel rose slowly for cross-examination. His voice was calm, almost gentle. Mrs. Prescott, thank you for your testimony. I have a few clarifying questions. Of course, you mentioned sending cards and gifts to Ethan over the years. Can you tell me approximately how many? I do not have an exact count. Many. Over the years. 10, 20, 100. I did not keep records of every card I sent. Do you have receipts, mailing records, any documentation? Silence. Then, I did not keep records. I see, but you are certain you sent them? Yes. Absolutely. Daniel shifted. Mrs. Prescott, what school does Ethan attend? He is homeschooled, I believe. Wrong. He attended Jefferson High School's specialized program. Who is his primary therapist? I am not certain of the current one. His therapist for the past 9 years has been Dr. Nina Reyes. Does that name sound familiar? My mother's face tightened. We were not given access to that information. And Ethan's medical conditions. Besides autism, are there any allergies or health concerns you are aware of? I do not believe so. Ethan has a documented peanut allergy. Diagnosed at age 8. Listed in every school and medical record for 9 years. The courtroom went silent. Daniel's voice remained gentle. Mrs. Prescott, in the 11 years since you last had contact with Ethan, have you ever attempted to learn basic information about his life, his health, his education? We were not given the opportunity. A simple internet search would have revealed his school. His therapist has a public practice. His allergy is listed in accessible records. Daniel paused. You did not reach out because you were not given the opportunity. You did not reach out because you chose not to, until there was money involved. Objection, Burke said. Argumentative. Sustained, Judge Hendricks replied. But the witness will answer the previous questions. My mother's eyes darted to my father. For the first time, she looked uncertain. Victoria took the stand next, more confident than her mother. She had rehearsed this. I could see it in her posture. Burke guided her through the familiar narrative. Loving aunt, concerned family member, pushed away by my hostility. My sister has always been difficult, Victoria said. Dramatic. When Ethan was diagnosed, she became obsessive, paranoid. She accused us of not being supportive when we were simply trying to help. I think about Ethan every day. I think about my own children who should know their cousin. Julia took that from all of us. Burke asked about her concerns regarding my management of Ethan's finances. Julia has no expertise, Victoria said. No background, and frankly, I worry she has become dependent on Ethan's success. He has been supporting them for... She stopped, caught herself. But it was too late. He has been supporting them. She had admitted she knew about the money, the dynamic, the details. More than a distant aunt should know. Daniel made another note. The rehearsal had cracked, and Victoria had just revealed it. Judge Hendricks called a 30-minute recess. My legs felt weak as I stood. Daniel guided us to a quiet corner near the vending machines. We are doing well, he said. Better than expected. They are lying, I said. Everything they said. And the lies are showing. Diane does not know basic facts about Ethan. Victoria slipped about the money. Burke's narrative has holes. Ethan spoke for the first time since entering the courthouse. Victoria checks her phone every 4 minutes. She is nervous, waiting for something. Daniel frowned. Waiting for what? I do not know. But her pattern changed after her testimony. She is expecting something to happen. A chill ran through me. Then the hallway doors opened. Lily walked in. She was pale, shaking slightly, but her jaw was set with determination. Victoria saw her first. Her face went white. Lily? What are you doing here? Lily did not look at her mother. She walked straight to Daniel and extended her hand. I am ready to testify. Victoria's phone slipped from her fingers and clattered on the marble floor. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Whatever she had been waiting for, this was not it. Richard had gone pale. Diane clutched his arm. They had not known Lily was coming. They had not known their own granddaughter was about to betray them. Daniel looked at Lily, then at me, then at the family frozen across the hallway. Well, he said quietly, this just got interesting. The bailiff's voice echoed through the corridor. Court will resume in 10 minutes. I took Ethan's hand. Part 1 was over, but the real trial was just beginning. Court resumed with a different energy in the room. Victoria kept glancing at Lily, who sat in the gallery with her hands folded and her eyes fixed forward. The air felt charged, electric, like the moment before a storm breaks. Daniel called his first witness. The respondent calls Margaret Chen. Margaret walked to the stand with the steady confidence of a woman who had nothing to hide and nothing to fear. 58 years old, practical, unshakable. She took the oath without hesitation. Mrs. Chen, how long have you known Julia Prescott? 11 years. Since she started working at Eastside Community Health Center. And in those 11 years, what have you observed about her relationship with her son? Margaret's voice was steady. I have watched Julia raise Ethan alone. Completely alone. She came to work exhausted every single day because she had been up all night researching therapy options or fighting insurance denials. She never complained. She never quit. Did you ever see any family members visit or offer support? Not once. Not a single time in 11 years. Margaret looked directly at the Prescott family. I have seen Julia cry exactly twice. Once when Ethan's insurance denied coverage for surgery. Once when her own mother sent an email saying, and I quote, "We are not responsible for that child." My mother flinched. Margaret continued, that woman raised a remarkable young man with no money, no help, and no family. And now those same people who abandoned them want to claim they were watching from afar? I watched from 3 feet away. They were not watching. They were waiting. Burke did not cross-examine. There was nothing to attack. Daniel called his next witness. The respondent calls Lily Prescott. Victoria's sharp intake of breath echoed in the quiet room. Lily stood, walked past her mother without looking, and took the stand. She was 18, legally an adult, free to testify without parental consent. Her hands trembled as she took the oath, but her voice did not waver. Miss Prescott, what is your relationship to the parties in this case? Victoria Prescott is my mother. Richard and Diane Prescott are my grandparents. Julia Prescott is my aunt. Ethan is my cousin. And what do you wish to tell the court today? The truth, finally. When I was 8 years old, I watched my family throw out my aunt and my 6-year-old cousin because he was autistic. My mother said he frightened my siblings. My grandmother said he was too much. My grandfather said nothing, which was worse. Did you maintain contact with Julia and Ethan? I tried. I sent cards, letters. But my mother found out and told me to stop. She said Ethan was dangerous, that Julia was unstable. I believed her. I was a child. What changed? Lily's voice hardened. I grew up. I started listening to what they said when they thought no one was paying attention. Daniel leaned forward. Can you give the court an example? Lily nodded. 3 months ago, before this lawsuit was filed, I heard my grandfather tell my mother if that boy ever amounts to anything, we need to be ready to act. He was not talking about helping Ethan. He was talking about controlling him. My father's face went gray. And after the lawsuit was filed? My mother and grandparents rehearsed their testimony. At the dinner table, multiple times, they practiced sounding concerned. They practiced crying at the right moments. Lily looked at her mother for the first time. This is not about protecting Ethan. It never was. It is about the money. It has always been about the money. Victoria looked away. Burke rose for cross-examination, composed, despite the damage. Miss Prescott, you are 18 years old, correct? Yes. And you have had a falling out with your family. Is it not possible your testimony is motivated by personal grievances rather than truth? I moved out because I could not live with the lies anymore. Burke tried another angle. You mentioned overhearing conversations. Is it not possible you misunderstood? I did not misunderstand we need to be ready to act. I did not misunderstand rehearsing testimony. But you have no documentation of these conversations? No, I do not have recordings. But Ethan does. Burke froze. My grandparents sent emails discussing strategy. One of them was accidentally sent to Aunt Julia. Ethan has it. He has everything. Daniel stood. Your Honor, we would like to call our final witness. Ethan Prescott. The room went still. Ethan rose slowly and put on his noise-canceling headphones, his approved accommodation. He walked to the witness stand with measured steps, sat, adjusted the microphone with precise movements. Then he removed the headphones and placed them beside him within reach. The bailiff administered the oath. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yes, I always tell the truth. Lying requires remembering false information. It is inefficient. Ethan, can you tell the court about your relationship with your grandparents and aunt? I do not have a relationship with them. A relationship requires interaction. We have not interacted in 11 years. Do you remember the night you and your mother left their home? Yes. I was 6 years old. My Aunt Victoria said I frightened her children. My grandmother said I was too much to handle. My grandfather said nothing. Then we left. How did that make you feel? Confused. I did not understand what I had done wrong. It took me years to understand that I had not done anything wrong. They had. The petitioners have suggested that your autism makes you vulnerable, unable to make financial decisions. How do you respond? I built a company valued at $3.7 million. I maintain documentation systems that most adults could not organize. I process information differently, not deficiently. My autism is not a weakness. It is why I see patterns others miss. Ethan opened his folder and presented his evidence. Every email with timestamp and metadata intact. Every voicemail transcribed and dated. He read them aloud without emotion. The email from Victoria saying, Ethan frightens my children. The voicemail from my mother saying, we are not responsible for that child. The text from my father refusing to help with surgery costs. And finally, the email Victoria had accidentally sent to me. We need to establish control over the finances before he ages out of minor status. The courtroom was silent. Ethan looked at Judge Hendricks. They do not want to protect me. They want to control my money before I am legally old enough to stop them. The evidence is clear. Is there anything else you would like to say to the court? Ethan paused. Then he spoke. For 11 years, my mother worked double shifts to pay for my therapy. She learned sign language when I could not speak. She fought every school that tried to exclude me. These people did not send a single birthday card. They did not call when I was hospitalized. They did not respond when my mother begged for help. He turned to face his grandparents. I do not hate you. Hatred requires emotional investment. I feel nothing for you. You are strangers who share my genetics. That is all. He turned back to the judge. I have one parent. She is sitting at that table. And she is the only family I need. Judge Hendricks removed her glasses. I have heard enough. I am prepared to rule. The petition for financial guardianship is denied in its entirety. I am ordering the petitioners to pay all court costs and respondents' legal fees. Any further filings of this nature will be treated as harassment." The gavel fell. I turned to Ethan. "We won," I whispered. He nodded once. The evidence was clear. The outcome was predictable. But I saw it. The smallest release of tension in his shoulders. He had not been as certain as he pretended. He had just been braver than his fear. Across the aisle, my family sat frozen. Victoria was crying, real tears now. My parents looked like they had aged 10 years. The family that threw away a 6-year-old boy had just discovered what he became. And what he became had destroyed them. We walked out of the courthouse into pale afternoon sunlight. The rain had stopped. The clouds were breaking apart. For a moment, neither of us spoke. We just stood on the stone steps, breathing. Behind us, somewhere inside that building, my family was gathering their things, probably already planning their next move, already trying to figure out what went wrong. I did not look back. I had spent 11 years looking back, wondering if I made the right choice, wondering if I could have done more, wondering if they would ever change. Today, I stopped wondering. Something shifted in my chest as we stood there. A weight I had not known I was still carrying began to lift, not gone entirely. 11 years of hurt does not vanish in an afternoon, but lighter, bearable now. Ethan turned to me, headphones around his neck, folder still in his hands. "Are you okay?" I almost laughed. My 17-year-old son asking if I was okay. "Yeah," I said. "I think I finally am, and I meant it. For the first time in 11 years, I really meant it." An hour later, Lily found us at a coffee shop on Southwest Morrison. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, hands trembling slightly. But she also looked lighter, like someone who had finally set down a burden they had been carrying too long. She slid into the booth across from us. "My mother will not speak to me," she said. "Neither will my grandparents. Lily, I am so sorry. Do not be. I made my choice. I would make it again." She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. I spent 18 years in that family, listening to them talk about people who were not there to defend themselves, watching them smile at strangers and tear apart relatives behind closed doors. I do not want to be that person. I refuse to be. She looked at Ethan. "I know we do not really know each other, but I would like to change that, if you are okay with it." Ethan considered the question the way he considered everything. "You told the truth when it cost you everything. That is a pattern I can respect." Almost a smile crossed Lily's face. I reached across the table and took her hand. "You have a place with us whenever you need it, for as long as you need it." Her eyes filled with tears. "Thank you, for not hating me for what they did." I shook my head. "You are not them, Lily. You proved that today." 3 days after the verdict, I went back to work. Life does not pause for courtroom victories. But something was different now. The weight on my shoulders had shifted. I stood straighter. Margaret found me during lunch, same as always. She brought 2 cups of coffee and a bakery bag. "Celebration pastries," she said. "Do not argue." I laughed. I would not dare. We sat in our usual spot by the window. "How does it feel?" she asked. "Winning." I thought about it. Strange. I expected to feel triumphant, vindicated. But mostly I just feel tired and relieved. That is healthy. Victory is not always fireworks. Sometimes it is just finally being able to rest. I pulled an envelope from my bag. "I want to pay you back. The money you lent me years ago." Margaret pushed it away. "Absolutely not. Margaret, that money was never a loan. It was an investment. In you, in Ethan. Look at what it grew into." She squeezed my hand. "Pay it forward someday. That is all I ask." I thought of everything Margaret had given me, not just money, but hope when hope was in short supply. "I will," I promised. "I already know how." 2 weeks after the verdict, Ethan found me in the kitchen one evening. "I have been thinking about the money," he said. He opened his laptop and showed me a document. A foundation. For families like ours. Families with autistic children who do not have support. I read through his plan: grants for therapy, scholarships for adaptive technology, emergency funds for single parents fighting the same battles I had fought. What would you call it? The Stayed Foundation. I looked up. Stayed? Because that is what matters. Not who shows up when things are good, who stays when things are hard. There is something else, he said. He pulled up another page. Sensor Map premium features will be free for low-income families. Forever. Written into the company charter. Ethan, that is a lot of revenue to give up. He shrugged. Money is a tool. Tools should help people. Otherwise, what is the point? I looked at my son. The boy they had called too much. A burden, too complicated. He was becoming someone who would change thousands of lives. And he was doing it because of who he was, not despite it. A Sunday morning in early spring. Ethan and I walked along the East Bank Esplanade, the Willamette River catching the light beside us. We walked in comfortable silence, the kind earned over years of learning each other's rhythms. Do you ever think about them? I finally asked. Your grandparents. Sometimes. Not the way I used to. How did you used to think about them? I used to wonder why they left. What I did wrong, whether they would come back if I was different. And now? He looked out at the river. Now I know it was never about me. It was about them, about what they could and could not handle. Their leaving says more about who they are than who I am. I stopped walking. When did you get so wise? He almost smiled. I had a good teacher. Dr. Reyes? No, you. That evening I sat by the window watching the city lights come on. I thought about the terrified woman who had driven through Portland 11 years ago with a silent child in the back seat. I had nothing then. No money, no plan, no family, just my son's hand in mine. My parents never reached out after the verdict. Neither did Victoria. I expected to feel something. Anger, sadness, maybe relief. Instead, I felt peace. They had made their choices. I had made mine. And my choice had given me everything that mattered. Family is not who shows up when there is money on the table. It is not who claims you when you are successful. Family is who stays when the lights are off, when the bills are due, when everyone else walks away. Margaret stayed. Dr. Reyes stayed. Lily chose to stay. And I stayed for Ethan, through everything. That is what matters. That is what always mattered. If this story resonated with you, if you have ever been the one who stayed when leaving would have been easier, I want you to know something. Your staying mattered. Maybe no one thanked you. Maybe the people you stayed for do not even understand what it cost. But it mattered. It shaped someone. It saved someone. Staying always matters. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment if you have been the one who stayed, or if someone stayed for you. And if you want to hear more stories like this one, real stories about family, truth, and what it means to fight for the people you love, subscribe to this channel. Because some truths do not need shouting, they just need someone brave enough to stay long enough to prove them. Thank you for watching. Thank you for staying until the end. I will see you in the next one. This story